What do this psychic, mathematician, and superfan have in common? Basically nothing, except that they all love Game of Thrones and are experts in their fields. And with the final season around the corner, we asked them to use their particular brands of genius to help us predict 4 burning questions we have for Season 8 of the iconic HBO show. Let's get to know our prodigies.
My name is Jack Rourke, and I'm a professional psychic.
My name is Sammy Asaf. I'm a professor of mathematics at the University of Southern California.
I'm David Rosenblatt. I'm a writer for WatchersOnTheWall.com, and here are my predictions for the final season of HBO's Game of Thrones.
Up first, our experts weigh in on what major deaths will occur during the final season of Game of Thrones.
Who do I think is going to die on the final season of Game of Thrones? Probably the better question is who's not going to die.
So there's going to be a lot of carnage in season 8.
There's a very large main cast, and there's a very large supporting cast.
We can actually run a probability. Let's start with the men. In Game of Thrones, men are about 8-to-1 more likely to die than women.
A lot of people are expecting that either Jon or Dany, one of them has to die, Song of Ice and Fire.
I would put Jon's chance of dying around 60%.
I genuinely believe that at the very least Dany will make it to the end.
And we'll take a second to talk about Dany because only one of Jon and Dany is going to survive. So if Jon survives, Dany's chance of dying jumps up.
One of the biggest deaths, of course, we're all assuming is going to happen is Cersei Lannister, which I think is inevitable, but it's the circumstances around her death which I think are going to be really, really fascinating.
Over here on the female side, Cersei is pretty much out.
I do not think Cersei is long for this world.
My experience of that character is that she's not who she says she is.
She's got an 85% chance of death, which I think will be kind of cathartic for all of us who've been through this whole epic.
Jaime will kill her and then ultimately die.
There's a lot of really solid evidence that's going to say that Jaime is going to do her in, but I don't think that's going to be the thing at all.
Jaime Lannister, probably he's going to die. He's got about a 60% chance of dying.
I think Jaime is in a position where he's going to actually have to defend her, even when it's tough.
I think Jaime will die in a final act of redemption.
Early on in the series, we learned that he didn't hold up his vows when it wasn't easy. So I think this time around, for the completion of his character, he's going to have to sacrifice everything for his honor.
But I do think Jaime will ultimately die.
Next, will Jon and Dany have a baby? And if so, will it be a boy or a girl?
I don't think that Jon and Daenerys are going to have a baby, and I'll tell you why.
They're definitely doing all the right things to make one, but keep in mind, season 8 has 6 episodes.
I do believe that they're going to have a child. I believe they're going to have a son.
Because I think it's an extra wrinkle, and the show at its core is not meant to be overly complicated.
Each episode would have to be about a month and a half in order to get us 9 months of gestation so that Jon and Dany could actually deliver the baby.
The question is, what role will the son play in the future moving forward? And will Dany and Jon Snow get to move into the castle and be a family? It's not going to happen.
This isn't The Wire. This isn't a very, very complicated, convoluted storytelling. At its core, it's a bunch of people fighting for a throne and now fighting to save humanity.
So it seems like it's not very likely that they're going to actually be able to come with a baby.
The revelation that, Jon is a Targaryen is itself enough of a twist. We don't need another Targaryen on the way.
If they happen to make one, being a mathematician, I'm going to have to say it's a flip a coin thing, 50-50 shot, boy or girl.
And when this all falls apart and that all the magic and all of Westeros is just part of a larger process, when the world resets, they're not part of it.
Fascinating. But when it's all said and done, who will end up with a dragon?
I think that the characters who will get to ride dragons, other than Daenerys, more than most likely is Jon. For one, maybe it's cheating. We saw in the trailer there's a shot of the two of them looking at the 2 dragons that are left alive. But at the same time, he is now her lover, regardless of his heritage. He is her lover, and I think the 2 of them flying side by side, it would be poetic.
At least one more dragon is going to fall to the Night King, and that'll probably happen early on at the Battle of Winterfell.
I don't know that anyone else will get the chance to, but I think if there's anyone, I think it, in many weird ways, most likely would be Sansa. They're going to want her to play a part in the Battle of Winterfell.
I think Sansa is going to ride the Ice Dragon. She's going to end up being converted and being the Night Queen.
And finally, the most important question of all. Who will win the Iron Throne?
I think the end result will be Daenerys.
So unfortunately for fans of the living, the throne is definitely going to the Night's King.
The Iron Throne is the thing that everyone's been fighting for, everyone's been striving for through the entire season. So who is going to sit on that throne? No one.
Who are our players? Well, we've got the humans, and at the start of season 1 of Game of Thrones, we can assume there are about 40 million humans. That's roughly correlated with the population during the Dark Ages of Europe.
For me, 8 seasons of buildup of Daenerys coming into her own and becoming a princess and then a queen. I think it would be a big punch in the face to both her and the fans to have that storyline not pay off with her sitting the Iron Throne.
I really believe that the throne is just a ladder. It's an illusion of power. It's not real.
But over the course of about 7 seasons, a lot of them have died. We've had about 175,000 deaths since season 1. Now, statistically, that's not so significant, but let's keep in mind that we have another player on the table, and those are the Whites and the White Walkers.
And we can see that systematically through the entire story that every house head in Westeros has been taken out.
I don't think that George R.R. Martin himself, even though the books haven't come out, it'll still end very similarly. He would not have written up to 7 books of her completely tangential storyline for her not to end on the Iron Throne.
There have been some humans, very few, but a couple, who've been turned into Whites. But we also have the problem that the White Walkers also can kill the humans.
So what we're going to find is that as the world is restored, that all of these noble people are going to come to the fore and sort of rebalance things, and the magic will leave.
Jon is certainly fit to be a ruler.
Jon Snow will not sit on the Iron Throne. He will either die, or I think he may actually go to Essos and rule. I think they'll return to Valyria.
But now, keep in mind that we have the Night King who can lift his arms and bring back all of these people. So we actually have a flow like this.
I think Dany will have to return to Valyria, or she dies in childbirth and goes into the Nightlands to be with Drogo.
And of course, the humans, with very limited success so far, but hopefully a little bit more to make it a bit more dramatic, are able to kill the Whites to some extent. So we have a small probability of the Whites dying, but this raising factor is really what's going to drive it home.
Who would govern in Westeros?
Yeah, what is going to be the kingdom after death and the undead and the Whites and the White Walkers take over? I think there will be a lot of rebuilding.
So if you run these models, even with very low probabilities that the humans are going to die, it pretty much tells us that what's going to happen is our population starts with the humans up here, and the human population is declining like this.
Can they come to an amicable solution there, building everything up from the rubble?
And the fan favorite is Arya and Gendry, right? But Arya can't stay in Westeros because she's magical. I suspect she ends up going back to Essos.
The best answer I can give is that we can look poetically as what happens when the Targaryens of old came and wiped out whatever was before it and started something new. I think it might parallel that in some way.
The population of the Whites, which starts out nice and low down here at 1,000, is climbing. And in the end, the humans are dead and the Whites are all that remains. So that means the Night King is going to sit on the Iron Throne.
So my prediction is that there'll be no throne at the end of Game of Thrones.
Wow, well, didn't really see those coming. Well, thanks. Oh, wait, you're not done.
You've got a tomb full of Starks that can just be raised up.
I have a sense that Arya takes out Brienne.
I think Clegane Bowl is going to happen. I absolutely think Clegane Bowl is going to happen.
But keep in mind, when you have a probability, it's just a probability. So even if there's a 1% chance of something bizarre happening, as Game of Thrones shows us time and time again, that 1% might just be the thing that happens.
I think it's going to be really, really unpredictable. Truthfully, I think you have to be an actual wizard to predict what's going to happen on Game of Thrones.
There you have it. Game of Thrones predictions based on science, facts, and clairvoyance. Probably the best you're going to get without kidnapping George R.R. Martin. Check out tvguide.com for more great Game of Thrones Season 8 coverage, along with your other faves.